Hi everyone, welcome back to the Velocity Banking series. For those of you who are new here, hi there, my name is JoJo, and today's video is the second video in this series. It's titled Breaking Down Loans and Lines of Credit. Now, these videos are intended to be watched as a series, so the information I'm presenting in this video is intended to build upon what I had presented last week. If you have not watched that video and you're just jumping in now and are confused, I will leave a link to the Series 1 video, which was an introduction to Velocity Banking, in the description box below. Just to recap from the Series 1 video last Saturday, we had started by defining what Velocity Banking is. And my understanding is that it's a strategy, a financial strategy that uses two-way lines of credit with simple interest to pay down the principal on one-way amortized interest loans, with the goal to save you money on interest. Velocity Banking is all about saving money on interest with those loans. We also, since it's kind of hard to distinguish what's a loan, what's a line of credit, so that's what we focused on last week. And then, since Velocity Banking is all about saving money on interest, we looked further into what variables go into calculating interest and more, why can this strategy save you so much money on interest for those types of loans. And then we also introduced this concept of an average daily balance, but more to come on that later. And where I left off last week, just summing up the presentation, was a recommendation for you to, on a piece of paper, split it in half into two sections. On one side, write down your one-way amortized interest loans, and on the other side, write down your two-way simple interest lines of credit. And then figure out how much money you spent on interest for those different debts in the month of August. Next was kind of a take-home message or something to just kind of think about, was this concept of financial psychology. I think it really comes into play, especially if you're on a debt-free journey, because of debt-free journeys, it's a very difficult process. And I think part of that is that you kind of have to face your demons, because there's a lot that goes into why you ended up in debt, why you had made certain decisions, kind of facing that reality of yourself. And I'm saying this because this is something that I have been going through and am still going through, because we are on a debt-free journey. And just understanding that, I feel like when sometimes you watch videos on other people's journeys, you can try to emulate what they are doing, but it might not necessarily work for you, because we are all very individual. We all have a different financial psychology. So, it's not to say that you should not be watching those videos or learning from them. I think that's an amazing benefit of this platform, is that we have access to that knowledge sharing, but to just know that what is working for them is not going to work for you necessarily 100%, because if you have a different financial psychology than that person, but you can learn more about different tools and pick and choose which tools you want to include in your toolbox, and then implement those to the best of your ability. And then next, I did discuss that it's important, even if you're not using the Velocity Banking strategy, to have a functioning and realistic budget. Now, I say this because my husband and I, a lot of what I tell you guys is things that I have done myself, because we were new to budgeting in September of last year, And we had air quotes been budgeting up until then, but it was not functional and it was not realistic. We were just keeping track of numbers in our head and would peek at our bank account here and there. There was no sort of transaction log or weekly check-ins. And if we could finance something and afford the minimum monthly payment, we thought that we were doing okay. So I just wanted to point out the importance of that. And then we also discussed this, thinking about your long-term goals to shift to this more wealthy mindset and, coming away from this middle-class mindset, which will plan more month to month, whereas a wealthy mindset will plan more long-term, like 1 to 5 years in advance. So what I had told you guys, as promised last week, I'm going to be sharing our real-world numbers, showing you how we broke it down. So here's our two columns. On the left-hand side are our loans, or our one-way amortized interest, which is a student loan and our mortgage. On the right-hand side is our lines of credit, which are two-way simple interest. It's a home equity line of credit, and then we do also have some credit cards. And as I'd mentioned, I suggested that you look at your balances in August. Now this is hypothetical because my husband and I began our Velocity banking journey on August 6th, was when we made our first transfer. So I had just kind of put in these numbers, and these are more predictions as an example. But this first one, this student loan, it is a refinance that I had done. I've been telling you guys that it was 3 years ago, but when I looked more closely at it, I actually refinanced this loan on June 20th of 2018. So it's just been a little over 2 years. It has felt like a lot longer than that because I've been carrying my student loans for so long. I graduated like 10 years ago from college, and I will tell you guys, when I first wrote down my student loan numbers in February of this year to look at all of our debts, it was essentially the same amount that I had graduated with 10 years ago. So in the last 10 years, all I have really been paying for is interest. Now this refinance came from several federal loans that had an interest rate of 6.4%. And I have been able to make some headway on it. When I refinanced it in June 2 years ago, the balance was about $68,000. So over the last 2 years, I've been able to bring it down by about $7,000. But when you look at an amortization schedule, I've really paid a lot of interest over the last 2 years on this loan. So it's kind of hard to tell when you have an amortization schedule. And from what I am learning is that most loans have an amortization schedule because they have a set term and they have a set minimum monthly payment. And those two factors equal an amortization schedule, or amortized interest. And the interest on this loan, the annual interest is 4.75%. My set minimum monthly payment is $543.40. I've included my mortgage just for completeness sake, but I'm not really going to be focusing on it during this presentation. More to come on that later. And that is more of our future goals, is getting that mortgage to go away. And our lines of credit in August, our home equity line of credit, it was our first debt focus. So in August, it had a principal balance of 0 before we made our transfers. And I've just noted here that it does have this average daily balance. I'm going to go more into that in future videos. I'm kind of just trying to break this up into smaller, more digestible bits of information and trying to keep these videos not so long. But the interest rate on this loan is variable. It's currently 5.05%, and since it had a principal balance of 0, or hypothetically, the minimum monthly payment was 0. And then we do also have credit cards. So what was the interest that we had paid on our loans? Or hypothetically, what we would have paid and what I have been paying. For a student loan, the student loan, I paid, or would have paid had I not been doing the velocity banking strategy, $247.34. And then for my mortgage, I did pay $811.29, which that is just mind-blowing. How much can be paid towards interest with a mortgage? And then on the right with my lines of credit, since they were all 0, more so the home equity line of credit, there would have been no interest paid. And I did just want to let you guys know, my husband and I have been cashless budgeters for at least the last 15 years. I can't remember the last time that I have carried cash on me. I will get it out every once in a while, more so as an allowance or when I need to, but it's just honestly not something I am comfortable with. And that's, again, understanding your financial psychology. I have had my credit cards, and I can't remember the last time that I have paid interest on my credit cards. They've just always been paid in full each month, and I track my expenses on my weekly check-in sheets now since September. I wasn't as good about this before, but my cards were always paid every month, the full balance. So I again, as I said, we have been using that method, and I'd honestly be more uncomfortable using cash, because if I have cash in my pocket, like any change left over, I feel the urge to spend it. So I'm almost would be more likely to spend more money with cash in my purse than I would with my card in my purse. But that is just how my brain works. Okay, so let's look at what we actually did in August with these loans and lines of credit. As I mentioned, with Velocity Banking, you use your lines of credit to pay down the principal on your loans. What did that look like for us? Well, I ended up transferring $20,000 from the home equity line of credit towards the principal on the student loan. So the line of credit went up by $20,000, and the principal on the student loan went down by $20,000. What did that look like for our interest? For the student loan, we ended up paying $168.28 on interest. And for the line of credit, the home equity line of credit, with the new minimum monthly payment of $91.25, $42.63 of that went towards interest on that loan. This ended up saving us $36.43 just for the month of August on interest. And it's like, if you really kind of think about that number, the savings, and how these things build up over time. So again, my student loan, it's a 15-year term loan. I am 2 years into that loan. I would, if I had followed my plan with the lender, I would still have 13 years left on that loan. So if you can think, I'm hoping to pay it off in the next 1 to 2 years. And if I save about $30 every month on interest over the next 1 to 2 years, that's at least $360 saved on interest alone for this one loan, using this concept on that one loan, which I was sold. As soon as I saw that prediction, when I had done these calculations on my Excel spreadsheet, I knew I had to give it a shot. So here's a picture view of that, because for me, I'm a very visual person. And this is a chart, a loan amortization chart. Just to walk you guys through it, on the y-axis is the dollar amount. So you can see that on day 0, the starting balance of this mortgage was $180,000. And on the x-axis is the period or the payment number. So when you see 50, 100, 150, 200, that is the number of payments, monthly payments. So 50 monthly payments or 50 months. And it looks like balance 0 is reached by about payment number 175. And if you divide that by 12, it looks like it's about a 15-year term loan. The blue line is the balance of the loan. The red line is how much interest is paid on the loan, and then the green line is how much money is paid towards principal. So if you look at the curve of the line in relation to the dollar amount and how many years, over the years, and thinking about as you're making, like this being your mortgage, as you're making your set minimum monthly payment, for the first 10 years of your mortgage, of having your house, most of that is going towards interest. Until it kind of reaches this threshold at about year 10, where you paid down little by little enough principal to where now more of your minimum monthly payment is being applied towards principal. For the last 5 years, then it shifts to where you're now beginning to make headway on your loan. But for the first 10 years, you're not really paying that loan down very much. And if you look at how much money you're paying towards interest, cumulative interest, by the end of that loan, it's about $120,000. So you end up paying $300,000 by the end of that 15-year loan for a $180,000 house. So what happens with velocity banking if you were to pay down the principal on that amortized interest loan? So let's have this hypothetical scenario with that same mortgage. Let's say 1 year into that mortgage, you're able to make a $20,000 principal payment. How does that change your loan amortization chart? I've blown this up so that you guys can see it more closely because there's kind of a lot going on with this slide. But I've started by, if you look at the dashed lines, the one on the x-axis is kind of marking where about the 1 year mark would be on this loan. And then the ones on the y-axis show how much you're increasing the amount towards principal, how much you're decreasing the balance on the loan. And the lines I have next to balance on the legend of this graph. I have just kind of lighter colors. So balance with the new principal is, or with this velocity banking strategy, is just a lighter blue. Cumulative interest is more of an orange color, and principal paid is a lime green. So you can see at about, let's say on the first year, if not following this strategy, looking at the dark blue line, it looks like you've maybe paid off like $10,000, and that's being generous. I kind of, to not make these lines look better or just more realistic, when the dashed lines, it's more around like $7,000 or $5,000 that you've paid off. But let's just say it's $10,000 for simplicity. So not using this strategy, your balance decreases from $180,000 to about $170,000 the first year that you have your house. But on the velocity banking strategy, you're able to apply an additional $20,000 towards principal. So instead of $170,000, you're able to bring it down to $150,000, the principal balance. And then when you look at the principal paid, instead of it being $10,000, it's now $30,000. And then just look at the curve of the line and how much sooner you end up reaching that threshold where the two lines cross, where they crisscross at about the $90,000 mark. It's a lot sooner in the term of this loan. So you shorten the term and then you look at interest. You're not going to end up paying the $300,000 for this house by the time you're done with that loan. It's going to be, I didn't calculate any of this out again, it's not graphed on Excel or anything, but it's just a lot less and it's sooner. So I wanted to just show that as a visual. So if this is a strategy that you're considering, how do you get started? Well, first, again, I can't stress it enough, is having a functioning budget. And then before beginning this strategy, after having your functioning budget, knowing your income and your expenses, you can figure out what your cash flow is, and you need to have positive cash flow to use this strategy. Next is figuring out what lines of credit are going to work best for you. And you can start by figuring out what you already have access to, or what you already have, or what do you have the potential to have access to. I know right now in the current climate, it's difficult to get any sort of lines of credit from the bank, but again, I've mentioned in last week's video, the YouTuber Think Wealthy with Mike Adams. He is amazing, you guys. He has, I really enjoy his channel the most of any of the YouTubers that present on this topic, because if he just presents such good information, and he's just, you can tell, at least I get the feeling that he is just a genuine guy who's really looking to help people and provide education on this topic especially. But if you want to go check out his channel, he'll kind of give some different lines that you can use to implement this strategy. And he's the one that had also talked about having this positive cash flow. He suggests at least $500. And then next is this figuring out what loans would be most beneficial for you to pay off first. So if you have multiple one-way loans, how do you know which one to start with? And Mike, again, of course, has a video discussing this. I mean, I'll leave that video in the link below. So if you want to watch it before next week's video, because I am going to go into all of these things on within this series, just breaking down our numbers and showing you how, based on the knowledge that I have gained from watching different videos on YouTube, how I've crunched our numbers. But and then next is having a way to track your money. So next week, what I'll be showing you is our cash flow, and then how we determine what loans to pay off first, and how we are using our lines of credit. I'm not sure if all three of those things are going to be addressed in next week's video, because it might end up being a lot of information to digest. And I'm, again, trying to keep these videos short, but there is just so much to cover. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll definitely be covering our cash flow and also looking at what loans we decided to pay off first. But that is going to wrap up this video, you guys. And if you're enjoying the contents of this series, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, checking out some of my other playlists. I have a velocity banking playlist and a budgeting playlist if you're looking for ways on how to get started with a budget. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments box below.